Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I want to talk about a graphic novel that I read. I am back on that graphic novel grind. I have a backlog of comics and graphic novels that I need to get to, and so in the next few weeks, I will be getting to them. Today, I wanted to talk about a specific one that focuses on gods and enchanted swords. I am referring to God Country by Donny Cates, along with art by Jeff Shaw, Jason Wordy, John J. Hill, and Gerardo Zaffino, among many others. For those who don't know, Donny Cates is a comic book writer, which you're like, no duh, of course he is, he wrote this, but it's really all he's known for. He's fairly new to the comic book scene, so he's been only writing for maybe the past 10, 15 years or so. He's written for Image Comics, which is what published God Country, I think DC and Marvel, and some other lesser-known publications. In one of his, the main ones are like Thor and Venom, which I think is interesting. Based on what I've read here, I would like to check out some other stuff that he has written, because this is pretty interesting, so be on the lookout for that in the future, maybe. But without further ado, let's talk about God Country. I will do a summary with some pictures showing up here and there, an analysis, and we will move on from there. So God Country takes place in West Texas. It focuses on Roy and his family, who moved to West Texas so that they could take care of Roy's father, who has dementia. But this isn't going so well because Roy's father, Emmett, is belligerent and he actually has Alzheimer's, sorry about that. But because he doesn't remember much, he's aggressive at times. And this is putting a lot of pressure on Roy's family. And his wife is thinking of leaving with his child. But before they can do so, a storm happens, which brings down a demon from an unknown parallel dimension. And in the process, Roy's dad, Emmett, acquires an enchanted sword that allows him to slay that demon. Roy discovers that Emmett can now fully retain his memories as long as he's holding on to the sword. But a godlike figure comes through a parallel dimension and claims that he wants the sword because it belongs to him and his family. Emmett and Aristus, I believe is his name, have a conversation where they talk about what the sword means to them, how it means a lot to Aristus's godlike father, and how this enables Emmett to retain memories of his dead wife rather than constantly forgetting with Alzheimer's. So he refuses to take the sword and tells Aristus to go tell his father to come and get it if he truly wants it. And so Emmett and Roy manage to bond for a little bit, but it's clear that Emmett's not going to accept that. It's very weird that having this sword it allows him to retain these memories and not forget as easily. And Emmett's kind of being belligerent in the process, making things very difficult for Roy. And at a certain point, one of Aristus's brothers, or his brother, shows up, Balagram, and as Atom, who is Aristus's father, wants the sword back. And so Balagram sends his armies of the dead to claim it from Emmett, and they fight, and in the process, Balagram takes Roy's daughter, Dee, to hell. While Roy and his wife engage in a pretty groovy gunfight, Emmett chases Balagram to hell and confronts him, but Balagram distracts him by bringing back Emmett's wife and kind of confusing him, causing him to drop the sword, but the sword rejects Balagram when he picks it up, as it is an enchanted talking sword, in case I didn't mention that before, and Emmett manages to pick it up and slay Balagram in the process. So with Balagram defeated, Adam decides that he is going to go for the sword himself. He first sends his son Aristus back to Emmett, and they have a big fight where Emmett is pretty much hurt quite a bit, but he refuses to give in as long as he has the sword. And this scares Roy and his wife and his child. And so they plan to leave, but it's not really possible because Aristus and Emmett keep destroying everything. Emmett kind of realizes that this is becoming a problem, so he decides to go into the realm where Adam is and challenges him to a fight for the sword. Adam and Emmett have a grand old fight, but Adam has the clear advantage because he knows how the sword works, and he's a bit more powerful because he is a godlike figure after all. And it's clear that Emmett is going to die, but Roy crosses over into the realm in order to save his father. And in the process, Adam's world, which was already on the brink of destruction, gets further destroyed, and Adam dies, presumably. And Roy and his father make it back, but the sword gets lost in the process, and presumably Emmett dies shortly thereafter. And the narrator notes that they weren't there for the story, but the story has been passed on through the generations and has been finally told to him, who is sharing it with everyone who is capable of listening. And that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there is one theme that is present throughout the story, and that is that of memory and legacy. Sort of how do you want to be remembered, and also are you capable of remembering the great things that have happened in your life? Adam and Emmett both care about being remembered, even though they're both completely different. Adam is a godlike figure capable of conquering worlds and destroying everything, and Emmett is a human who is at the start of the story dealing with mental illness, as he has Alzheimer's and is forgetting everything and is not really capable of maintaining his aggression. They both care about being remembered, though. Adam's way of dealing with this is to destroy entire worlds in order to build up his legacy and cement himself as the peak godlike figure. And Emmett's way of doing this is to hold on to the sword. Once he gains the sword and regains his memories, he knows that if he loses that sword, he's not going to remember anything. And so the sword will allow him to build up his legacy in a small way, and be remembered as in a positive light by his family, not as someone who's forgotten everything. And it'll also allow him to retain memories of his wife, his grandchildren, of pretty much everything. But the interesting thing is, time has ravaged both of these characters. For Adam, his entire world has been destroyed because of time. There's an interesting quote about this that I'd like to read to you. "A force even greater than the mighty Adam began to crumble the kingdom of always, time. Inevitably, all things die. The sun that gave life to Adam's kingdom grew cancerous and imploded. In the final hours of its destruction, Adam used every bit of his immense power to hold a portion of his world from falling into the black void of the collapsed star. These days, it exists as a husk of its former self, an ashen ghost of a kingdom, a blink away from being forgotten for all time." And there you have sort of the opposite of what Adam was hoping for, to be remembered by everyone, but his realm has been destroyed, and the only thing keeping it together is the small power that he's using to make sure that it doesn't collapse into the star and be gone forever. So it's clear that Adam isn't able to preserve his legacy, and he's going to be quickly forgotten once he dies, or very few people are actually going to remember him. And the same applies to Emmett. They're in the same boat there. Emmett has Alzheimer's. He no longer remembers, or he can only remember a little bit at a time. It seems like both of them are not getting what they wanted out of this. But Valifax serves as a way of preserving their legacy. Perhaps Adam can traverse universes with Valifax and claim more realms that he can maybe build up his kingdom. The same applies to Emmett. He may not be trying to conquer realms, but the holding on to Valifax allows him to retain memories and appear in a positive light towards his family, as I was saying before. So their battle over Valifax is really a battle over memory and legacy. They don't really want the power that comes with it. They just want to be remembered by those who come after, which I think is really the heart of the story. And it seems like Kate is arguing that time destroys everything, that even if they are able to build up their legacy, it'll eventually be destroyed and wither away. But at the same time, there again, mixed messages here, because as he says that at the end of the story, he says like, oh, as long as those we love hold us in their memories, we will live on forever. But again, he just said time destroys all things. You can't have it both ways, and it seems like Donny Cates is trying to have it both ways. So the story is really great up until maybe the end with that message, and then it just comes off as a bit contradictory. Despite that weird message, there is great art as has hopefully been popping up throughout this video if I remembered to place it there. I especially like a couple panels that serve as sort of memory panels where Emmett is remembering what happened in the past. And you have like an entire page or maybe like half a page that shows a specific memory that happens in between the other events of the story. And it's very, very beautiful. Like it shows like Emmett trying to remember something good, or maybe not necessarily something good, but trying to remember something that happened to him, because any memory is better than no memory at all. And I do think this art is pretty good. It stands up there with some of the best art that I've found as I've been talking about graphic novels. And then another thing that I'll note is I talked about, I think I mentioned American Gods at the beginning, but if I didn't, it's clear that Donny Cates has been influenced by Neil Gaiman. I do think this is Neil Gaiman light, and that this seems to be, it takes some influence from American Gods, because this was published nearly 20 years later, and the story is essentially the gods on our planet and human beings coming into contact with them, and those gods confronting the fact that they will not be remembered forever, as was the case in American Gods. Now, it might not be, a complete copy of it, but there are some influences there, and I do like that influence is there, because American Gods was a great story. Now, I do think that Donny Cates is certainly no Neil Gaiman. It does kind of flounder here and there, but that's also a good thing, because Neil Gaiman has a tendency to get distracted by weird nonsense at times, which bogs down his stories, and you don't really see that here. Besides the conflicting message, this is very straightforward and very good. Like the artist and the writer, like they work together to make something that's pretty excellent. But I did notice that there was a connection to American Gods, even if it's not mentioned anywhere. I do want to get that out there, because Neil Gaiman is a big influence, I think, in comic books and in storytelling in general. And the more we point out and acknowledge that, the more we can celebrate the great stuff that Neil Gaiman wrote, and hopefully forget about the bad stuff he wrote, and just see where that takes us in the future as more stuff is written, and see if his legacy can truly be preserved, which this book would argue maybe not. So anyways, I just wanted to point that out. Anyway, those are my thoughts on God Country by Donny Cates, a pretty good graphic novel story with wonderful art. I do think that the art particularly stands out. The depiction of some of the gods reminds me of Galactus from Marvel Comics, which is always wonderful. I like the design of Galactus in general. So anytime I see that elsewhere, I'm just full of minor joy. So I do recommend this, just because this is something that you might enjoy if you like Neil Gaiman, but also if you're interested in a pretty solid graphic novel story. This might satisfy you. It's certainly no like time-tested classic, but it is a lot of fun. If you read this before, or you simply want to comment on something I said here, do so below. Let's have a discussion about God, country, and perhaps Donny Cates. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and godlike travels. Farewell.